Bonjour, my name is Alison Evans, and I am the President and CEO of Research Canada. C'est un grand plaisir d'être avec vous aujourd'hui. I would like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you on traditional unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin people. J'aimerais souhaiter la bienvenue à tous et à toutes à cet événement du Comité parlementaire sur la recherche en santé. On behalf of Research Canada and our co-host, the Parliamentary Health Research Caucus, welcome to this event, which we've called Shaping the Future of Healthcare with New Technologies, Devices, and eHealth Innovations. Today, we'll hear from 10 leading researchers who will offer firsthand insights into healthcare innovation. Un grand merci à chacun de nos incroyables présentateurs d'avoir pris le temps d'être avec nous aujourd'hui. If you aren't aware, Research Canada is a multi-stakeholder alliance whose members draw from the academic, private, and voluntary sectors, and we are dedicated to advancing Canadian health research and innovation. Since 2009, we've collaborated with the Parliamentary Health Research Caucus, which provides parliamentarians an opportunity to engage with Canadian health researchers to learn more about discoveries, innovation, and the social and economic benefits of Canadian health research and innovation. Nous sommes fiers d'inviter les meilleurs et les plus brillants chercheurs et innovateurs en santé à présenter leurs travaux aux parlementaires. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce the Honourable Dr. Helena Jaczek, Member of Parliament for Markham-Stouffville and Chair of our Parliamentary Health Research Caucus, a fantastic champion of Canadian health research and innovation. Elle a siégé à de nombreux comités permanents et a remporté plusieurs prix pour son travail visant à améliorer la santé de tous les Canadiens. Please join me in welcoming the Honourable Dr. Helena Jaczek.
Merci, Alison, pour vos aimables paroles. Bienvenue à mes collègues de la Chambre et du Sénat, ainsi qu'à mes collègues du Parliamentary Health Research Caucus. I'm really excited to be here for this Parliamentary Health Research Caucus event to explore the transformative potential of technology and e-health in healthcare. As we delve into this dynamic field, we are presented with endless opportunities to revolutionize how we approach health and wellness. From telemedicine to wearable devices, the possibilities are boundless. And I look forward to engaging discussions and insightful presentations that will undoubtedly shape the future of healthcare. Thank you for joining us on this journey of innovation and discovery. J'espère que vous êtes tous aussi impatients que moi d'entendre les experts d'aujourd'hui. Je voudrais maintenant remercier nos commanditaires pour leur générosité. Thank you to our prime sponsors, Kids Brain Health Network and the Foundation for Improving the Lives of the Community Living with Ehlers-Danlos Syndromes and related conditions, including chronic pain, for your incredible support of today's event. I would also like to thank and recognize the 2024 lead sponsor of the Parliamentary Health Research Caucus, Innovative Medicines Canada. And finally, I'd like to extend our sincere appreciation to Becton Dickinson and Company Canada, Lakehead University, the McGill University Health Centre Research Institute, and the British Columbia Provincial Health Services Authority, and the Thunder Bay Regional Health Research Institute. Merci à vous tous pour votre soutien. J'ai maintenant le plaisir de vous présenter notre commanditaire principal, Médicaments Novateurs Canada. Before Alison then will welcome our outstanding presenters, we will hear a few short remarks from Innovative Medicines Canada, the ILC Foundation, and the Kids Brain Health Network. We'll also host 2 question and answer sessions, one after the first 5 presenters and another following the final 6 researcher presentations. So get ready with your questions. Now, please join me in welcoming our first speaker, Hugh Scott, Executive Director of Strategic Alliances at Innovative Medicines Canada. Over to you, Hugh.
Hugh is actually just kind of having trouble getting in. So why don't we move to the next speaker right after that? I believe it's Jacqueline.
Yeah, great idea, Kevin. We'll keep an eye on Hugh. And so if Jacqueline Raposo, the Executive Director of the ILC Foundation, is on, Jacqueline, maybe you could do your remarks. Rebecca, do you see her on?
Oh, there I am. I had a problem unmuting, but now I'm good. There you go.
Oh, great.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for that lovely introduction. The ILC Charitable Foundation is excited to join Research Canada's Alliance and contribute to advancing health research and health innovation through collaborative advocacy. As you know, my name is Jacqueline Raposo, and I am the ILC's Executive Director. The ILC story began in 2010 when two incredible women came together to advocate for a young girl who was suffering from what the medical world believed was a rare condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. These women recruited a passionate group of community-minded people, and they formed the ILC Foundation to help those with Ehlers-Danlos syndromes and related conditions, including chronic pain, to overcome the challenges of living with these unknown disorders and improve knowledge to develop appropriate healthcare support. The ILC organizes and funds programs to support its strategy to raise awareness about Ehlers-Danlos syndromes, hypermobility spectrum disorders, and comorbid conditions, or EDS-HSD+, which affects 1 in 300 Canadians and 1 in 5 people living with chronic pain, including children. The ILC's commitment to engaging Canadians and their families living with EDS and chronic pain in research is a cornerstone of our mission. This engagement, coupled with the translation of research results, will lead to the development of care pathways that are currently lacking. We see lasting partnerships between our organization and researchers with evidence to improve access to healthcare as critical. The ILC model of community-based care fosters knowledge transfer between peers. Since 2013, the ILC has organized and funded the Canadian EDS Annual Conference. National and international multidisciplinary specialists present in their respective areas of expertise, along with interactive patient engagement sessions. 8 of these events are CME accredited. As members of Research Canada, we want research to assist us with the following. For someone with EDS-HSD+ who lives with intermittent chronic acute pain, should have access to diagnostic tests to ensure they have the necessary proteins and enzymes to metabolize medications during clinical procedures. We want to discover what investigations for those with corneal rupture can enhance comprehension of the organization of collagen fibrils and the specific collagens within the sclera that contribute to ocular structural integrity. Additionally, what research is available to mitigate the risk when expectant mothers whose babies are born with osteogenesis imperfecta experience easy bruising, the doctor's alleged child abuse, parents are wrongly charged, and babies go into protective services. Furthermore, what specific microbiome study for gastronomy can explain the underlying factors contributing to gastrointestinal conditions and how factors might impact cell activation disorders? And as we will soon hear from Dr. Alain Moreau, whom the ILC recently joined to collaborate with the ICANN CME Research Network, up to 20% of patients with myalgic encephalomyelitis exhibit a joint hypermobility or EDS-like phenotype. Dr. Rodney Graham, one of the world's leading experts in EDS, said no other condition in the history of modern medicine has been neglected in such a way as Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. The ILC aims to discover how research can break down barriers to care for the EDS-HSD+ population in Canada's health system. Once again, we are thrilled to join Research Canada and participate in today's forum. The ILC looks forward to building collaborations that will lead to successful research outcomes in the future and improve population health. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now I do understand that Hugh has made it successfully onto the call, and I'd like to ask Hugh to provide his remarks now.
Thanks, Alison, and apologies to everybody for the difficulty getting in, but I'm here, so welcome. Thanks, Alison. I'm Hugh Scott. I'm Executive Director of Strategic Alliances at Innovative Medicines Canada. We're a proud sponsor of the Parliamentary Health Research Caucus and today's event. I think, as most of you know, IMC represents Canada's innovative pharmaceutical industry, and our members work to discover, develop, and deliver transformative medicines and vaccines to Canadians. Our industry also contributes over $2.4 billion in R&D to Canada each year. Looking forward very much to today's topic of shaping the future of healthcare with new technologies. It's a topic that we as an industry are extremely passionate about. Innovation is at the heart of everything that we do, and it's what drives our members' work every day. Because of this, we're keen to work with the research community, with governments, and health leaders across the country to help Canada create and adopt new healthcare innovations. This is really exciting time in the pharmaceutical landscape, and a large part of this is due to the convergence of what used to be separate disciplines. We now have data engineers developing AI models to help with disease diagnosis and drug discovery. We have scientists and clinicians working with drug developers to create targeted treatments for difficult to treat conditions. Unfortunately, Canada historically has lagged behind other countries in adopting innovation. For example, it takes more than 2 years for Canadians to get access to approved new medicines, which is 1 year longer than compared to patients in peer nations. As a result, we rank last in the G7 in the time that it takes for patients to have access to new treatments through government drug plans, through public plans. This not only hurts patients and their health outcomes, but it places additional strain on our fragile health systems and drives away future innovations and investments into Canada. At a time when we're on the cusp of so many exciting advancements that could transform healthcare, we just need to make sure that Canadians can benefit from them when they're available. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from the researchers today. And I do believe that the future does look bright if we can collaborate and tackle some of these issues together. With that, I'll turn the podium back to you, Alison.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Hugh. And it's my pleasure for the virtual tour over to Jeff Pradella, the CEO of the Kids Brain Health Network.
Great. Thanks, Alison, and thanks for the thought-inspiring remarks of our previous speakers. Merci, Alison, et merci pour les remarques inspirantes des intervenants précédents. My name is Jeff Pradella, and as you've heard, I have the honor of serving as the CEO for Kids Brain Health Network. I live, work, and play in the traditional territories of the people of Treaty 7 in Alberta and home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Districts 5 and 6. We're delighted to be here at an event that brings together so many key players to advocate for long-term sustainable health research funding, spurring innovation, and ensuring that Canadians are among the healthiest in the world. Thank you to Research Canada for inviting us to participate in and support your work as sponsors. As KBHN, we have focused for 14 years, as many of you know, on the health and well-being of children with neurodevelopmental disabilities, or NDDs, such as autism, fetal alcohol syndrome disorder, and cerebral palsy, as well as their families. Our vision is that all children living with these challenges get what they need to enjoy the best possible quality of life, have opportunities to participate in a truly inclusive society, and reach their full potential. But our story is really about our network. As a Canada-wide research and innovation network, we offer funding and program supports to a broad range of innovations, including many that are technology-based. We're here today also advocating to ensure Canadian children with NDDs and their families are seen, heard, supported, and engaged. As many of you know, since 2009, we have established significant advances thanks to federal funding through the Networks for Centers of Excellence program. As we shift gears for our next 5-year horizon under the Strategic Science Fund, let me just say how grateful we've been to our vast range of partners, each of whom has contributed funds, time, talent, expertise, and passion to our mission and shared journey of scientific discovery. With the substantial new investment, Kids Brain Health Network and its network partners are now poised for continued success. This funding will play a pivotal role in sustaining and expanding our work, enabling us to continue delivering proven solutions in early identification, early intervention, effective treatment, and family support. We look forward to continuing to collaborate with our partners at the national, provincial, and local levels to maximize the potential that the SSF's objectives promise to Canadians and the contribution that it makes to furthering our work, ensuring translation and mobilization of research and knowledge make it into innovation, practice, and action, and most especially makes it into the hands of Canada's children. We're very proud of our network's joint and shared commitment to supporting research, implementation, and scaling of groundbreaking new technologies and eHealth innovations. At last year's caucus, for example, a team from KBHN presented on helping kids with autism crack the code of learning emotional health and social skills through the online and hybrid Secret Agent Society Life Skills program. This year, you'll have the chance to hear from Dr. Elina Birmingham and Dr. Siamak Arzanapour from Simon Fraser University, supported by Kids Brain Health Network, about their team's intelligent sound sensitivity device, which is designed to improve everyday life for kids with autism and other NDDs. Kids who today are overwhelmed by triggering noises that are difficult to avoid and limit their participation and inclusion in everyday activities like playing, learning, and socializing. Thanks to the sound sensitivity team's work, these kids will benefit from programmable earphones that selectively filter out the noises they struggle with, while allowing them to hear important sounds like their teacher's voice or the presentations we're going to hear today. Throughout our network, scores of researchers are developing equally impressive evidence-based solutions for the most pressing problems impacting our community of children, their families, and their caregivers. Our network mission focuses on bridging that gap between science and practice so that solutions and innovations ultimately reach every child in Canada that has the opportunity to benefit from them. They get impacted in the real world, where they reach the kids who need them most. Lastly, research into solutions for kids and families living with NDDs is an excellent and proven public investment. Better assessment tools, supports, and systems are shown to reduce lifetime costs by improving those lives. And most importantly, they will improve children's lifelong well-being, enjoyment of life, participation, and potential in the world. Merci à tous pour l'opportunité de participer aujourd'hui. And Alison, with that, I will turn it back to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone who delivered remarks up front for setting the stage so well for this incredible event. It's a great segue from Jeff's remarks into our first two researchers. But before I go there, I'm just going to say, folks, this is an incredible show and tell of sorts. As Helena described in the format, we're going to tee up a group first, and then I'll sort of facilitate a Q&A, and then we'll go into our second group. I cannot, in the time that we have today, do the backgrounds and expertise of these folks justice. Longer bios and more information on each of them are on the RC Research Canada website, which is rc-rc.ca. I will give very brief nods to their affiliations, but really this is a chance for you to get a sense of the incredible work they're doing, for us to ask questions. And then, of course, Research Canada is happy to help facilitate further connections, partnerships, and the like. So without further ado, and thanks for Jeff to sort of showcase the first two researchers, Dr. Siamak Arzanapour and Dr. Elina Birmingham, both affiliated with the Kids Brain Network. Dr. Arzanapour is professor at the School of Mechatronic Systems Engineering at SFU, Simon Fraser University, and an expert in dynamic systems modeling and AI. And his colleague, Dr. Elina Birmingham, directs the Autism in Education Lab at Simon Fraser. With that, I would like to ask our first two to take the floor. And one final thing, I have the privilege, but also the tricky job of trying to keep this whole thing on time. Just so everyone knows up front, we have discussed as a group that our researchers are trying to keep their initial show and tell to 5 minutes, and I will have to jump in if anything goes super long, because we want to give the many guests on this call opportunities to ask questions. So again, our first presenters, the floor is yours.
Okay, I am going to share my screen, and we've got sound shared. Okay. All right, thank you, everybody. That was such a lovely introduction, Jeff. We really appreciate that. It makes my life easier. So I want to start by sharing some firsthand examples of what I mean by decreased sound tolerance. These quotes are from caregivers of autistic children. He says the sound of sweeping with an outdoor broom hurts his ears and is painful. She has said that when a sound bothers her, she can't concentrate on anything else and it's distracting. He says that dogs barking, buzzers in crowded areas that are loud make his ears hurt and are scary for him. Decreased sound tolerance is a negative reaction to sounds that don't bother the average listener. For autistic children, loud, high-pitched, and unexpected sounds are often the most problematic, such as sirens, dogs barking, babies crying, and construction noise. Other times, though, even quiet sounds like a clock ticking can cause extreme distress. Importantly, decreased sound tolerance significantly impacts children's ability to participate in everyday activities and to learn and interact with others. In some cases, children may not be able to participate at all. Not surprisingly, many families make use of devices like earplugs, earmuffs, or noise-canceling headphones to help their child cope with their decreased sound tolerance. While these devices can be helpful, they also have some serious drawbacks. Because they block all sounds indiscriminately, they interfere with the full participation of the child in the classroom and other activities. For example, they prevent the child from hearing speech or important safety signals. They can also, ironically, worsen decreased sound tolerance over time if they are relied on too heavily. In other cases, though, they don't block enough, meaning that the aversive sound still gets through and is still heard and therefore still causes distress.
As Elina mentioned earlier, the decreased sound tolerance problem is very subjective. So our main question at the beginning of the project was whether we could accurately detect and block the aversive noises. For the blocking, we did not want to isolate the kids from the environment. So our question was whether we could target only the aversive noises and selectively remove them from the surrounding sounds. Next slide. We realized that conventional filtering algorithms are inappropriate for this application, and a more intelligent and flexible device that can learn which sounds to block is needed instead. Such device should also adopt the user's preferences, which vary from person to person. Our device's artificial intelligence-based software can detect an aversive noise in milliseconds and feed a more tolerable version of the sound escape into headphones worn by the user. For example, the device could block barking dogs, crying babies, sirens, or jackhammers, while leaving important sounds like a teacher's voice intact. Once the aversive sound is no longer detected in the environment, the user goes back to hearing things normally. Now I want to show you a quick video that demonstrates the device's functionality.
In this video, I will show you the demo of the software. On the right side, you can see the first page of the software. What you hear now is the output of the system, which is exactly playing into my ears. Since there is no aversive sound in the environment, the classifier says it is a normal status and the filtration is not activated. But now I will play an aversive sound, a siren sound, to see how the system works. So let's see. As you can see, the system detects siren as an aversive sound and it's changed the status bar to aversive sound to show the user that there is aversive sound in the environment, and it is filtering it right now. You can hear my voice clearly, but there is no siren in it. I will turn up the sound, and then the status of the system will be back to normal. Means that there is no aversive sound in the environment.
Okay, I know we're running out of time, but I'd like to leave you with one quote. We've been obviously testing this device in the lab, and now we're moving it into the real world in a field test. So one quote from an autistic participant who has tried our headphones said, we asked her, what, in an ideal world, what would you want to help you cope with your decreased sound tolerance? And she said, this product, something that can connect to my personal headphones and can filter through that. I have very targeted sounds that are very abrasive, such as sirens. Being able to cancel it out and keeping it canceled until it is fully gone is great. So we're really excited about our next steps towards a commercially viable product. Thank you for your attention today.
Wow, that was incredible. Congratulations on this important work. I'd like to now ask Dr. Philip Awadalla, the Director of Computational Biology for the Ontario Institute for Cancer Research and Professor in the Molecular Genetics Department and Dalla Lana School of Public Health at the U of T, to get ready for his presentation. And also, just a point, folks can not only track questions they have for researchers as we go through this first grouping, you are more than welcome to also track your thoughts, ideas, comments in the chat, and we will keep an eye on that as well. So with that, Dr. Awadalla.
Great, thank you very much. Can you hear me fine? All right, okay, so I've just got our sharing of screen. That should be okay as well. Great. Thank you, Alison. So thanks to the PHRC for inviting me today. So I have two objectives today in my 5-minute presentation. One, it is to tell you about how Canada's population cohorts can enable research and discovery and also technological innovation. So I'm going to describe the CanPath population cohort, which has been going on for the past 15 years, and justify why we've been collecting that data, and then of course showing you how we've been using that information to develop technologies, particularly in the space of early cancer technology detection. So 1 in 2 Canadians will develop a cancer or chronic disease, and 1 in 2 Canadians will die from cancer. So we know from research that the earlier that we can detect a cancer, the better our survival rates are. And so one of the reasons I'm describing that today is because we've been collecting data for the past 15 years from over 370,000 Canadians across Canada, which allows us to capture information, biologics, through linkages to Canadian Institute for Health Informatics, capture from this large population laboratory information that might enable us to develop, say, technologies that will help improve the health of Canadians. And so one of the things that we've been working on specifically is using both data and blood samples collected from participants who came into, say, the CanPath cohort, the Canadian Partnership for Tomorrow's Health cohort. We can identify individuals who came into the cohort healthy and then have subsequently developed a cancer. And that's all that this slide is trying to show you, is that using these data linkages, we can identify participants who came into the cohort healthy, retrospectively went back, had that blood sample in our cohort. We know that they developed a cancer, then we go into those blood samples and see, can we detect a signature of that cancer before a traditional diagnosis? So I'm highlighting today work developed by my student, Nicholas Cheng, who's going to be graduating in September, and who's been working hard on developing what we call liquid biopsies approaches for early cancer detection. And the way these liquid biopsy approaches work is rather than say using invasive approaches like mammography or more surgical procedures, blood samples like plasma or serum capture the signature of a cancer somewhere in the body. And mutations that are circulating in that DNA can tell us not only that there's a cancer, but they can also tell us what tissue that cancer might be coming from. So we've been using tools from CanPath where we have blood samples collected from participants before they develop cancer. And all we're trying to show you here in this slide, the colors are the participants who developed a cancer, and their blood samples look different. They have those DNA signatures of breast cancer, prostate cancer, and pancreatic cancers, distinct from those of age and sex match controls with BMI, and so on. And in many cases, we can detect those signatures up to 7 years before somebody's actually been diagnosed with it. And sometimes these people had a mammogram recently before they gave us a blood sample, and we can see a signature when the mammography couldn't. And not only can we use these things to capture breast cancers very early, but these are generalizable to say metastatic breast cancer, prostate cancer, and pancreatic cancers as well. So just to summarize, large population cohorts like the CanPath cohort is a fantastic tool for collecting information about the life history of participants, and we can use that information to develop these types of tools. And we're now at a space now where we can show that we can develop a non-invasive liquid biopsy approach to detect a cancer many years before diagnosis. And the one thing I just want to end off with, it's my last slide, is that we're now moving out of cancers and moving into identifying signatures using CanPath that who are these people who are healthy agers in Canada, and what kinds of information can we identify that help us be a healthy ager. So these are this is a massive study ongoing for 15 years with massive partnerships, and this really is my last slide actually. So just want to acknowledge all of these participating groups. So thank you very much, Alison.
Of course, and thank you for sharing, and congratulations on this important work, and please pass that along to your student and all those in your teams. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Simon Drouin. He is an associate professor in the Department of Software Engineering and Information Technologies at the École de Technologie Supérieure. Dr. Drouin.
Hello, Alison. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs les députés, honorables sénateurs et sénatrices. Comme la présentatrice l'a dit, est-ce que tout le monde peut voir mon écran? Can everyone see my screen? OK.
All good.
Donc, comme la présentatrice l'a mentionné, je suis professeur au département de génie logiciel et des technologies de l'information à l'École de technologie supérieure à Montréal. Aujourd'hui, je vais vous présenter en quelques minutes les grandes lignes de ma présentation, de ma programmation de recherche qui vise à améliorer les techniques de simulation, de planification et de guidage pour la chirurgie. Et plus précisément, mes travaux visent à évaluer l'utilisation des technologies de réalité mixte, soit la réalité virtuelle et la réalité augmentée, dans le but de rendre différents types d'interventions chirurgicales plus sécuritaires, plus rapides et moins invasives pour les patients. Donc, le modèle qui est souvent cité en exemple pour imaginer le futur des technologies chirurgicales, c'est le monde de l'aviation. Donc, au cours des dernières décennies, l'industrie aéronautique a été en mesure d'améliorer grandement la sécurité des vols aériens grâce, entre autres, à des simulateurs extrêmement réalistes comme l'exemple que vous voyez à l'écran. Donc, grâce à ces appareils, il est maintenant possible pour les pilotes de s'entraîner dans tous les scénarios possibles et ce, sans risque pour les êtres humains, ce qui est le plus important. Donc, l'hypothèse qui est à la base de mon travail de recherche, c'est qu'il est possible de reproduire un modèle similaire pour le domaine de la chirurgie en développant une suite d'outils qui offrent le même niveau de précision, d'intégration pour l'entraînement, pour la planification et pour le guidage des opérations chirurgicales. Mais évidemment, la chirurgie est un domaine relativement complexe et il reste de nombreux défis à surmonter pour aider le personnel médical dans son travail. La plupart des hôpitaux de pointe au Canada sont équipés de systèmes de guidage pour la chirurgie, comme celui que vous voyez à l'écran en ce moment. Donc, ces systèmes permettent d'établir la correspondance entre des scans médicaux tridimensionnels qui sont affichés sur l'écran d'un ordinateur et le patient qui est sur la table d'opération. Ceci permet de réaliser des opérations qui sont moins invasives et moins traumatisantes pour les patients. Donc, par contre, ces systèmes demeurent relativement difficiles à opérer et très peu intuitifs. Au cours des dernières années, les progrès de la réalité mixte ont fait en sorte qu'il est de plus en plus facile de simuler des interventions médicales simples, mais il existe encore très peu de simulateurs crédibles et abordables sur le marché. Donc, la vidéo que vous voyez à l'écran démontre le travail d'un de mes étudiants de maîtrise, Alejandro Olivares Hernandez, qui a bâti un système de simulation d'insertion de cathéters veineux périphériques en réalité virtuelle. Donc, la procédure qui est simulée, bien que routinière dans la plupart des hôpitaux canadiens, est encore responsable d'un grand nombre de complications. Donc, le travail d'Alejandro consiste à améliorer sans cesse le niveau de réalisme du simulateur et d'effectuer des études auprès du personnel hospitalier pour déterminer si l'entraînement sur un simulateur permet d'améliorer leur performance et donc de réduire les complications pour les patients. Ce genre de simulateur-là va nous permettre évidemment de s'entraîner sur des modèles. Par contre, ces modèles sont relativement génériques. Mais dans un contexte clinique réel, on voudrait pouvoir répéter une procédure sur l'anatomie réelle du patient sur lequel on veut intervenir. Donc, c'est pourquoi une partie de notre travail s'articule autour de la visualisation et de l'interaction des cliniciens avec des images médicales en réalité virtuelle. Donc, la vidéo que vous voyez à l'écran en ce moment, c'est le travail de Andrei Titov, qui est un doctorant sous ma direction, qui travaille à faciliter l'exploration des images de tomodensitométrie pour la planification d'opérations chirurgicales. Dans ce cas-ci, c'était pour la chirurgie de tumeurs cancéreuses complexes qui sont infiltrées dans la moelle épinière. Donc, grâce à ce type d'outil, il est possible de planifier très précisément le chemin d'approche d'une chirurgie afin d'éviter d'endommager les tissus vitaux ou de provoquer des hémorragies. Donc, c'est bien d'avoir une bonne planification pour une chirurgie, mais une fois que le plan d'approche est établi, il est important de pouvoir réaliser ce plan avec précision en salle d'opération. Les systèmes qui sont disponibles à l'heure actuelle, comme je l'ai mentionné plus tôt, restent passablement difficiles à utiliser et peu intuitifs. C'est pourquoi nos travaux visent à transporter les innovations qu'on a réalisées pour la planification en réalité virtuelle vers la salle d'opération, et ce, à travers la technologie de la réalité augmentée. Donc, cette technologie nous permet de visualiser les plans opératoires et l'anatomie profonde du patient directement dans le champ de vision du chirurgien. C'est ce qui nous permet, au chirurgien d'observer in situ, donc directement sur le patient, ce qui se trouve sous la surface du champ opératoire et d'ainsi approcher plus intuitivement la cible chirurgicale. En somme, c'est un peu comme si le patient devenait transparent pour le chirurgien. Donc, l'objectif de nos travaux pour le futur, c'est d'augmenter le réalisme des simulations pour mieux entraîner le personnel médical de façon sécuritaire. On veut améliorer le rendu et les interactions avec les images médicales 3D pour une meilleure planification des opérations. À terme, on voudrait aussi combiner nos technologies de simulation et de planification pour développer une simulation qui soit spécifique aux patients, ce qui permettra aux chirurgiens de pratiquer une opération avant de la réaliser, mais sur les données réelles du patient. Donc, en somme, à la fin, on veut aussi être capable d'améliorer les techniques de réalité augmentée pour pouvoir transporter l'expérience de simulation vers la salle d'opération, mais avec une interface similaire. Personnellement, j'ai la conviction qu'à terme, le résultat de nos travaux permettra de réduire les risques associés aux opérations chirurgicales, réduire le taux de morbidité et de mortalité, ainsi que la durée des hospitalisations pour toutes les Canadiennes et les Canadiens. Sur ce, je vous remercie pour votre attention et je serai disponible tout à l'heure pour répondre à vos questions. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Simon. Très intéressant. The visuals are so incredible. That's really interesting work. It's now my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Martin Ferguson-Pell, who is a biomedical engineer and credentialed clinical scientist and a professor of rehabilitation medicine at the University of Alberta.
Thank you very much indeed. Can you hear me okay? We're good.
Yes,
Great.
we can. You're great.
I'm going to talk about virtual care for people living in rural communities. And as I'm sure most of us are aware in Canada, this is a major problem for many Canadians. And working at this from the Alberta perspective, about 24% of Albertans live in rural settings. And this really creates a series of different access issues that they have to healthcare. We estimate that the average cost for an Albertan living in a rural community to travel to a single clinic visit is $450 out of pocket. And of course, in addition to that, there are serious issues around safety traveling in the wintertime. So what we're looking at is the potential for using technologies to enable people to have more complex assessments than we would normally associate with a phone call, for example, and look at what we could possibly do in order to provide assessments and follow-up using virtual technologies. And so there are a series of opportunities around this. Part of it is that we can start to build synchronous clinic-to-clinic models. The benefit of a clinic-to-clinic model like this is we start to bring communities together. So we may bring in, for example, an urban specialist to work synchronously with a rural clinician who has a clear understanding of the context of the patient and the context of the care that that person will be receiving, following the follow-up, following the assessment, and following the pathway that that patient might be directed towards. It also encourages interdisciplinary activity. So this is an opportunity, again, synchronously for different disciplines to come together and support a patient during their assessment in a way that is more difficult to do in a face-to-face environment. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the sort of technologies that we can use and that we're currently using in order to create this bridge. So I wanted to emphasize that our model is a clinic-to-clinic model. So what we're looking at is how we link an urban clinic to a rural health center, for example. And so in that rural health center, we will have a clinician who is going to be responsible probably for the ongoing care of that person in their community, and also to help ensure that the patient is safe. One of the challenges of virtual care is this sense of trust that needs to be built very quickly between the patient and the clinician who may be in a very distant urban setting. They have maybe minutes to build that trust that is going to be important about the decisions that are going to be made. What we found is that the use of a telepresence robot like this one can be an important tool in building that relationship. And there's an uncanny connection that is built when we use a robot like this between the person in the urban setting and the person in the rural setting. We've had extensive feedback from patients who participated in this program, indicating how much they value that sense of presence that is built when you have a mobile robot like this that can move around the clinic room under the control of the urban hub clinician. But as you can see, built into this, we have at the back a laptop, and in the front, two cameras. One is a classic zoom-like camera that gives you the picture of the room, and the other one is a 3D camera that enables us to use special markerless motion capture software in order to help us do that assessment. So these two systems move around the room and enable us to do something like this. So this is a single camera, markerless motion capture, working in 3D. And what it does is it looks at body landmarks in the video image and then associates coordinates with them. So it can say where that knee, where that hip, where that ankle is in space, and then do a calculation in real time that tells you what the knee angle is or the hip angle is. And so this is one of the ways that you can measure range of motion remotely. There are a whole series of different things that you can measure, and it's very simple to then transmit this information in real time that is being presented by this software using desktop sharing, just like I am now, to a urban clinician using Zoom or some other platform that's used for teleconferencing. So the platform is really simple. The technologies that we use are very versatile. This is one example of the kind of technology you can use. Well, one of the other benefits of using this kind of measurement, it introduces objectivity into measurement that we're not used to having in a face-to-face assessment. In a classic face-to-face assessment, so much of what is done is observational and is in the mind of the clinician, but is not necessarily recorded. And of course, that can create some difficulties in relation to cross-clinician observation and also longitudinal recording of that person's assessment, maybe over weeks and months, which is something, of course, in rehabilitation that we find all the time. So in this example, the sit-to-stand test, what we're able to do is use the data from that 3D camera and break the sit-to-stand test down into a number of different components. So the lean forward, the stand up, how balanced you are when you're standing, how you sit down, how you return to your neutral position. Each of those components can be quantified. So this is an example how we can use that quantification. So what we did was take 3 groups of people: healthy younger people, healthy community dwelling seniors, and then supported living seniors. So the younger people are in blue, the community dwelling seniors are in the greener color, and then the supported living people are in red. And what we can see is using these measures from that sit-to-stand test, we can see how the supported living people stand out, how different they are in this cluster analysis. And that indicates that there may be a difference in the way they're performing that test. And that even when you look at the individuals there, you can see the people who are outliers. The likelihood is those outliers are the people at high risk for falling. This is a capability that we can do in real time now that we wouldn't have had available to us using pure observation. So just a quick overview of where this all stands, and there's a lot to this story. First of all, we can do more comprehensive specialist assessments virtually. We can reduce that professional isolation that so many rural clinicians experience and create communities of practice. That we can also create data-driven decisions that were not data-driven before when we were living in the face-to-face world. We can empower that collaboration now and build networks between local therapists and therapists in urban centers. And that we can make this synchronous so that you can have the family member, the patient, and the 2 clinicians that are involved in their care, all in the same room, all at the same time, all hearing the same message. And we think this is likely to result in much better follow-up and focus on the care pathways that are provided to patients. And then finally, what this does is provide us continuity data that is consistent across multiple visits, giving us greater sensitivity for looking at differences and changes that occur in that patient's functional performance. That empowers the patient because they're now getting information that is sensitive, more immediate, and is then giving them an incentive to carry on with their care. So
time check, just saying a time check here, okay?
Great, yeah. Final key point is this is 80% process and 20% technology. And so when we develop these kinds of systems, it's a highly collaborative process. So thank you very much for your interest in this work.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And let me just see, have we got Dr. Alain Forster on deck, I believe. Dr. Forster's research focuses on the quality of healthcare, particularly the role of digital technologies. He is the Director of Innovation, Transformation, and Clinical Performance at the Research Institute of the McGill University Health Center. Dr. Forster.
Hi, you can see my screen?
Yes, we're good.
Yeah. So my work has been focused on creating value from digital health. It really that focuses on both the patient experience, the value of healthcare from the cost perspective and lowering the cost, as well as addressing population needs. And really for decades, there has been a promise of digital health, which really has not been realized. And so we've been looking at reasons why that's occurring, why we have not achieved the value. And today I'm going to spend most of my time talking about the need to focus in on data literacy and use within our broader health system, as well as in decision making regarding how we can improve. So first of all, data is really at the core of our ability to define the quality and value of care. And you've seen examples of data today, but there is a lot of data residing within electronic systems that are used for care, but can also be then harvested and used for evaluation. The problem is, of course, that data is largely inaccessible to policymakers. Even within institutions, researchers and innovators have trouble getting access to data, let alone patients and innovators from outside of healthcare. And so really we need a strategy that helps to democratize access to data, which I'll speak to in a moment. And then finally, there is a requirement for us to think about the innovation pathway. We've been seeing a number of different technologies today in a variety of states of readiness for adoption in the health system. But we have to be thinking about data and data use all the way through from ideation of the product to the minimally viable product to testing in a clinical environment to then moving up into adoption pathways where it's beginning to be used in the health system, and we need to determine, unintended consequences as well as also the value for money equation. And really, if we're not thinking about data along that entire pathway and how technology firms are going to be accessing that data, we're not going to be able to achieve success. 3 ideas at the McGill University Health Center where I work, and which is also being used elsewhere across the country. I'd just like to spend a bit of time addressing. So the first is we're implementing a large big data platform called MD Clone in our center. There's a number of other institutions in Canada doing this, but really this is something I think policymakers need to be aware of. That what this big data platform does is it creates something called synthetic data, which takes our electronic medical and clinical data, which has a large number of privacy issues with it, but it translates it using artificial intelligence into synthetic data that synthetic data, while it retains the statistical properties of the electronic medical record data, it does not have personal health information. It has been judged by legal experts as non-human subject data. And so this creates a big platform for us to now collaborate with academics, with industry, and also within our institution to start driving towards more of a digital culture. On the far right, you see our CLIP, which stands for the Clinical Innovation Platform. This is a physical place, but also a set of policies and procedures that allow digital innovation to occur within the healthcare system. And really what this does is it allows for both what I'll call organic innovation. So the innovations where people make discoveries and develop products internally to our organization, as well as external innovators. So people, startups, and even large companies can come and work in our clinical environment. So we're developing the technology in the incubator, but then taking that to the clinic and into the population through our hospital platform. And then the middle there is our Canadian Personalized Health Innovation Network collaboration. That's a network of hospitals, academic institutions, industry partners, and patients, and then government, really to facilitate through collaboration a more trusting relationships to share data so that we can accelerate adoption of digital technologies. And again, we're leveraging both the CLIP and the MD Clone platform to support those interactions. I would like to just share an example because it highlights some of the issues we're talking about. We focus on a number of different technologies, and one of which is ways in which we can facilitate better coordination of care and better access to care for people in the community who are waiting for care from a variety of sources. Back pain is one such problem where it's very difficult, and coordination of care can be quite problematic. Using an artificial intelligence platform, as well as understanding the business rules, some of our neurosurgeons built a platform that has actually been demonstrated to reduce pain and disability for back pain, reduces unnecessary imaging tests, which frees up that capacity for other patients, and also improves access to care by reducing it from sometimes years to days. And this is quite a simple technology from a technology sake point of view. But it does require change in the healthcare system. And that change is going to have to come because we can articulate the value from the data perspective. And so just coming back to this last part of realizing value, these tools and the great tools we've heard today are not going to result in value to people unless we can move to adoption in the health system. And I think it's worth reflecting on where are we seeing the barriers to adoption. Often when I speak to innovators, they struggle with determining who's going to buy their product, who is accountable for the care that's being provided. And I would fundamentally say that those questions are not really answerable if people don't have access to data. So that's why really our focus has been on making the data be available, both to people coming up with the ideas for these technologies, to incorporate those into the technologies, but also for those responsible for evaluating the impact and ultimately purchasing them.
Time check, you're over.
And I'm done. Thank you.
Awesome and fantastic. And with that, and I want to really thank this first group of experts for doing such a great job and for highlighting, especially for this large audience, making a great entry point for us to understand the key aspects of your work, what makes it important. And I am delighted to see all the activity in the chat. What I'm going to do is I'm first going to see if there's anyone who wants to put up their hand using the Zoom feature to ask a question of our first group of researchers. I'm just going to see if I see a hand or if any of my colleagues. Yes, Fiona, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm from Brain Canada, and my question is for the first team. So that's really interesting technology for filtering out noises for people living with autism. And my question was if there are, or if you've explored sort of incidental implications for safety. So if they're walking on a street, hearing a siren or a honk, for instance, could be important to maintaining safety. And I'm wondering what implications that kind of technology may have.
I can take that, Siamak, if you want, or you do. Okay,
go ahead. Yeah.
That's a super important question. And if we had more time, we would have highlighted that consideration for sure. Of course, we don't want to isolate people from those important signals. So one option is and we're working on this right now, is to create an alert system when there is an important sound. So we can detect it and we can manage the sound, but they obviously need to be aware of their surroundings. So we can send a verbal cue or a tactile cue to alert users to important safety signals like that. And another thing that came up in the chat was around, well, do we really want to block things all the time for everyone? No, I think, we want to work on developing tolerance over time. So maybe what we do to manage the sound can change over time so that those individuals can eventually tolerate more and more of the siren. So the goal is not to just isolate people from their environments. Thank you for that question.
Great. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to ask a question of the folks who were in the first group? Because if not, I want to invite, okay, Imrana, would you please go ahead?
I have a question regarding the autism patient. Do you have any alternate technology which can address while they are traveling?
Sorry, I missed that. Could you repeat that last part?
Actually, my question is this tolerance detection, sound detection technology you're talking about. Is there any else technology or the same technology which can address the issue while the autism patient or autism child or another child like ADHD client while they are using transportation or public transportation?
I think it's about being in transit, on transportation, and while traveling. How does the technology work in those scenarios? Thank you so much for your question. I hope I've done okay repeating just it's hard for us to hear you, but hopefully the researchers can respond now.
Siamak, would you mind taking that one?
Yeah, so if I understood the question right, it doesn't really matter where the user is. Since it is a wearable device, it can be used in stadiums, in theaters, anywhere that users interact with their social life. So there is no limitation.
Thank you for that. Other questions from the guests today? If not, what I wanted to do is there anyone who put their question or comments in the chat who would like to take this moment to illuminate those further? And or do any of the researchers want to clarify anything they've seen in the chat and or address anything they heard from each other? We're all being very polite, and clearly everyone's 5-ish minute presentation answered everything we ever needed to know. I do obviously really commend people for sharing these incredible insights. I do have one regarding, well, I originally thought of it during, I believe it was Philip's presentation about the blood testing. But it probably kind of in a general way applies to several of these things. What I was thinking is, you know, when you described it could be used in place of a mammogram or other procedures, I was thinking, wow, it's so important to have less invasive ways of testing for such important things. I suppose there are initial startup costs that could be quite maybe high for new technologies or innovations, but is it also that these tests could be ultimately less costly, faster, and of course, less invasive?
Well, absolutely. So, you know, we emphasized in our work that early detection improves survival. And so a lot of what we're developing here is thinking along those lines, but a cost, in terms of a cost saving with regard to the health system, if we can take people out of those routine, expensive, difficult screening approaches like mammography, for example. There was a comment about, well, there was actually a comment that there isn't actually in the comment section that there wasn't even a screening approach for ovarian cancer. But if we can tell a participant, you know, how do you, and this always comes up actually, how do you interpret a 5% or a 3% risk or a 10% risk? But we would love to get to a point where we can say you're at 0 to 1% in this time frame. And so this year or the next couple of years, you don't have to go in. So that's a different sort of health saving in terms of not just finding cancers earlier and treating them faster, and but also in terms of removing them from those health screening procedures as well.
And not seeing anyone else. Oh, yes. Alain, would you like to go ahead, please?
Yes, thank you. I actually wanted to come back to the group that talked about the headphones and the noise cancellation for autistic kids. So we at Crohn's and Colitis, we do a lot of work with apps and user engagement, and I was curious to know how or what kind of study you've done on kids adapting these headphones, because these can be a little annoying and heavy, and it's not something they're going to wear the whole day. I was just thinking of my AirPods, and they've got some really powerful noise cancellation and adaptive features. So how do you see that from an adaptability point of view when it comes to these kids?
Yeah, it's a bit tricky because some kiddos prefer over the ear and some prefer in ear. There's often an issue with tactile sensitivity. So in this group of kids, in-ear headphones like the AirPods are challenging. They tend to be not tolerated for very long. So it is something, a design perspective is needed. We need to be, I mean, we've been consulting people along the way around what their preferences are, but it's going to vary from person to person. And so that's why we're trying to create something that's flexible, that could be used with whatever device you're used to or accustomed to. And that's almost its own project, you know, like what is the best wearable for a person on the autism spectrum? So it's a great question. I don't have the answer for you yet, but we have to be flexible at this point.
Great, thank you for that. And now, Eleanor, would you like to ask your question?
Thank you. So far I've heard, wonderful presentations, and I anticipate we're going to hear some more. And because this is a parliamentary presentation platform, I guess my question is, the science that's going on is fabulous. The technology innovations are outstanding. The seed funding to get the research done, by hook or by crook, it gets done. The next stage, and we've heard about this in the very opening comments, is translating that to the benefit of Canadians in terms of biotech, startups, and that's where I see a huge gap. And I wonder what the government of Canada and what some of our esteemed colleagues here see as a mechanisms to take those very promising technologies and therapeutic interventions, whatever, from the proof of principle, which we're seeing right now, through to some sort of commercialization that Canadians will benefit, that we don't lose it from our jurisdiction. So it's a pretty broad question.
It is a great question du jour, and very apropos, just following the federal budget, 2024 federal budget. And I see several of our researchers would like to get in. How about we go Martin and then Alan?
Great, thank you. Yes, just a quick comment to say I absolutely agree. It's a critical issue. It's a big problem that we encounter, but it's not just, I think, the commercialization pathway, but it's actually the system adoption pathway. System is very risk averse, and we, I think, pay a penalty for that risk averseness. And the classic example is Banting and diabetes, right? I don't need to tell you more about that story, but it's a clear example of something that's been going on since the 1920s.
Okay, Alan, did you want in? And then I'm going to take Erica and Jeff from the floor, but then I'm going to start us into our next group of researchers. And of course, we can have a bit more Q&A at the end if we keep moving along. So Alan, and then Erica, then Jeff, and then I'm going to tee up our next group.
Thank you for the question. I think that's actually sort of the basis of my presentation. There really is a massive problem in healthcare. Martin talked about the risk aversion, but I would also say that on the flip side, there actually isn't a lot of benefit. So if you need to buy a technology, like most hospitals are paid through global budgets, most physicians and other providers are paid fee for service. There really isn't a lot of incentive for improving the actual patient experience or quality of care. You don't get more money if you do a better job looking after patients. If you spend less money, you have to give it back to the government. So there really is not a structure within healthcare that make it adoption a worthwhile exercise. It's easier just to continue doing the same as you've always done. I think some of those
Alan.
structural
Erica?
issues need to be addressed.
Yeah. Erica? If you're speaking, you're on mute. I'm just seeing a box with Erica and a hand up. Maybe that's an error. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to Jeff.
Okay, thanks, Alison. Just as a quick sort of follow-up to Eleanor's excellent comments and Martin's follow-up on that. One of the things we're really excited about as recipients of the Strategic Science Fund money is what I would describe, for those who understand the NCE structure, as going into cycle 4. And so our focus under the SSF and the intent of that program is to shepherd, support, and provide sort of wraparound services to various projects, including ones that have worked with us for over the last 14 years, and getting them on an implementation ready and then market ready position. And so that will, the term commercialization is a bit of a shorthand. It doesn't always fit with the programs or products, but looking at how do we get all of these amazing discoveries into the hands of kids through the creation of social enterprises, translation of knowledge into clinical practice, virtuous cycle, business models, etc. So what you're talking about is exactly our mission over the next 5 years, and we're very excited about it.
Yes, and I'll just wrap by saying to Eleanor's broad questions, Research Canada, in that we represent the entire ecosystem of health research and innovation, is acutely aware of the parts of that continuum that are receiving more funding or more attention, and the gaps and work that is still needed to be done. We would be more than happy to include you in our advocacy, given your interests and how eloquently you stated the issue. And we are working not only within Research Canada with its members and the Alliance, but also in partnership with many other national stakeholder groups who share the same interest under the banner of the Canadian Research and Innovation Coalition. And so we are already looking ahead to Budget 2025 and the future election as important moments with which to continue to press these issues. So thank you for that. And now it is my great pleasure to move us into the second grouping of our incredible experts. I'd like to start with Dr. Liam Kelly, who is the Regional Director of Research and Innovation for the Newfoundland Health Services. Dr. Kelly.
All right, thanks, Alison. I'm just trying to bring up my slide here. Okay. Alison, can you see the PowerPoint okay? Just make sure.
It says you've started sharing screen. I just can't see it quite yet, but now it is. Now it's there. Shared vision.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, so first of all, thanks for the opportunity to present here today. And it's an exciting time to be in healthcare as a researcher and, a senior leader in innovation and research perspective. Today, we have more therapies than at any other point in our history. People are generally living longer, and we've seen a big expansion of life expectancy over the last 10 years. But the big challenges we struggle with today is that our healthcare system really isn't designed to deal with more the chronic nature of diseases and the fact that we're having people live very long lives and having multiple interactions with the healthcare system. So this leads to a very costly healthcare system, and it's a reactive system. So transformation is what's required to really be able to meet the needs of the population more broadly. So I'm part of Newfoundland and Labrador Health Services, and we've began some of that transformation work looking at rebalancing the system from acute care to community care, looking at social determinants of health and things like that. And one of the key things was to amalgamate our regional health authorities into a provincial health authority that we're calling Newfoundland and Labrador Health Services. So when I would think about innovation, so what do we mean by innovation? Innovation is not invention. So people confuse those two things sometimes. Innovation is, from our perspective, is looking at adopting new technologies to provide value to the system more broadly. And when we think about value, it's outcomes, not just any outcome, but one that matters to our patients, our clients, and then being able to look at how we're able to create cost efficiencies in the organization more broadly. And if I was to take innovation and transformation, I kind of describe it in this way. when we want to do transformation, we need to have more innovation in the system. And we look at current state and we move towards best practices. We kind of think about this as quality and quality performance type metrics. But going from best practices to transformation is going to require a lot of innovation and thinking differently about problems. And when we think about the transformation work that needs to happen, it really is about moving from a healthcare system that's reactive and providing services to how do we support the health of the population more broadly. So going from a healthcare system to a health system. Fortunately, there's tons of technologies, new technologies out there that can drive a lot of value into our healthcare system. The challenge has always been, as others have talked about earlier, has been the adoption of those technologies in the healthcare system. So we think about artificial intelligence, virtual augmented reality, telehealth services, and wearable devices. They have great potential to solve challenges in healthcare and be able to provide value for our patients and drive cost efficiencies as well. When we think about the adoption of technologies and new innovations in healthcare, it's usually a very long, drawn-out process. And that's the problem that we want to be able to solve. How do we leverage these innovations, these technologies, to bring them into the healthcare system? So at Newfoundland Labrador Health Services, we've set up what we call a living lab. And a living lab is focused on bringing in these new innovations and technologies and being able to derive value from them. Our innovation strategies focused on, enhancing outcomes for our patients, driving cost efficiencies. But to build on Eleanor's comment earlier, we're also focused on economic development. Because if we're able to bring in new technologies and innovations into our system to solve a problem in our system, then those problems exist not just in Canada, but internationally, and they should be able to drive economic development. To support the system adoption and commercialization challenges in healthcare with new technologies, we've developed this pipeline of testing that is designed to accelerate the health transformation. And it's patient-centric, it's client-centric approach, looking at value, then mirroring what was done in the pharmaceutical space, where we have preclinical phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 research studies to be able to get at the efficacy of therapeutics. So we have a research team that I lead that's focused on, understanding the technology, its potential to solve a problem. Service offering we call technology briefs, preclinical work, human factors, looking at the interface between the technology and the end user. Then when we bring it into the clinic, we start doing other types of research programs where we talk about acceptability. We recognize that an innovation may be effective, but if we can't adopt it within the healthcare system, if it's not an acceptable way of doing or delivering healthcare, then its ability to solve that problem is going to be limited, feasibility, and effectiveness.
Just giving you a time check here, okay?
Sure. And so from that, so this is our ability then to answer specific questions along the way to be able to help the adoption of a problem. If a solution solves a problem for us, we try to support the commercialization of that project solution to really realize the benefit of the solution more broadly. And that's it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That was Dr. Kelly from Newfoundland Health Services. And now I'd like to ask Dr. Aislin Mushquash, who's Associate Professor in the Department of Psychology at Lakehead University and a clinical psychologist at Dilico Anishinaabeg Family Care, to take the floor. There we go.
Thank you. I believe the slides are going to be shared. There we go. Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I'm coming to you from Thunder Bay, Ontario, where I live and work on the traditional lands of Fort William First Nation. For those unaware, Thunder Bay is a city in northwestern Ontario, just a short 15-hour drive from Toronto. So today I will highlight a problem facing youth and systems in our community and describe how the Joypop app is making a difference. Next slide. So what is this problem? Many youth are struggling and can't get access to support. Adolescent and teen years can be super exciting and filled with new opportunities, increased independence, and some youth really thrive during this time. Unfortunately, many don't. For some youth, they experience high levels of anxiety and worry about their future, the world, their family, and their own health. For others, they experience persistent sadness, guilt, or shame, along with negative self-critical thoughts that they aren't doing well and never will. These mental health struggles are really common, and sometimes youth have to wait years or months or even years to get the help that they need. And this is especially true in more rural and remote Indigenous communities. When youth have to wait, their symptoms get worse. They feel hopeless that things will ever get better. And there's an increased risk for more serious outcomes, like risky substance use, self-harm, or suicide. Next slide. So digital mental health apps offer one promising solution that can get help into the hands of those who need it when they need it. There are thousands of apps that exist, and unfortunately, most of them don't have good quality research or data to suggest that they're actually helpful. The Joypop app is changing this. Joypop was created with youth and is designed to improve their mental health and resilience by helping people understand their emotions and practice strategies to deal with stress. So on the next slide, I'll just take you through some of the features of the app. The Joypop app has several key features, including Rate My Mood, which allows users to track how they're feeling. Journaling and art provide opportunities to express those feelings. Deep breathing and square moves provide opportunities to relax and refocus. Sleep Ease helps create a calming environment to improve sleep. And Circle of Trust connects users directly to their support system. By supporting our Joypop research, you're helping us find solutions at a crucial time because we can't wait. So next slide. The Joypop app has. So as I said in the video, we can't wait, youth can't wait. Now's the time to move beyond acknowledging the problem and implement and evaluate solutions. We've been studying the Joypop app for the past 7 years in Northwestern Ontario among both Indigenous and non-Indigenous youth. After using the app, youth have seen improvements in their mental health and coping skills. And importantly, this app has been especially helpful for youth who've experienced more adversity and early trauma, like abuse and neglect. Mental health staff and program administrators have been eager to add this to the menu of options for youth and study the impact that it's having on youth, service providers, and systems. We currently have projects underway looking at how the app can be useful more broadly within secondary and post-secondary education settings as a mental health promotion tool, within clinical settings as a tool for those on the wait list, and as an add-on to therapy to facilitate better between-session engagement and communication between youth and their service provider. With all of these projects, our focus is on understanding how the app can improve resilience, coping, and mental health among youth, but also on the health economic benefit that adding the app can have on the broader system. Together, our research is creating more accessible mental health supports and making sure that what's offered is actually helpful for youth and for the systems that are working so hard to support them. Next slide. I appreciate the opportunity to talk today about our work, and I would welcome anyone to reach out and connect if you would like to talk more or explore using the app within your setting. If you follow the QR code, it'll take you to a site with all the Joypop links and a survey just to enter your contact information to get in touch. Thanks so much.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thanks for letting us know how to stay connected with you. I can see that there's lots of interest in what you've presented here today, and that's exciting. I'd now like to ask Dr. Plinio Pelegrini Morita, who is an associate professor at the School of Public Health Sciences, Faculty Health, and the director of the Network for Aging Research at the University of Waterloo. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Alison. I am just struggling to put my slides on presentation mode. Just give me 1 second. I'm just going to change one thing. Let me stop sharing, and then I'll get this started again. To share the full desktop. That should give me more control now. There we go. Problem is that Zoom is hiding my control bar. There, here we are. Thank you everybody for your time and for inviting me to present at this wonderful event. My name is Plinio Morita. I'm an associate professor in the School of Public Health Sciences at the University of Waterloo. And my research focuses on identifying better uses for existing data that we have, not only in our healthcare system, but also on our own personal devices, and make sure that we can use that for public health applications. So my research lies at the interface of, sorry, I think I have this bar. Can you see my menu bar on the screen? Yes, let me try to get rid of that somehow. My apologies. Let me just stop this for a second here. There are hidden floating menu controls. Here we go. Can you see it now? My screen still on?
Yeah,
Yep.
we can see it extreme heat. Yep.
Perfect. So let me just, sorry, just 1 second here, just hiding this again and starting it again. Perfect. So let me go back. My research focuses at the interface between public health surveillance and novel data sources from IoT sensors and mobile health. And what the current climate, no pun intended, but the current climate that we see globally has been showing us is that we are not prepared for dealing with these events, right? Like we're observing extreme heat events globally due to climate change. We're also observing like extreme air pollution cases in certain parts of the world. Canada is not severely affected by air pollution like other countries, but Mongolia, for example, has very, very severe cases of air pollution. And the pandemic also has shown us that we were not prepared to deal with these extreme adverse events. And what we need to do is to find new ways to understand population behavior and to understand what's happening at the population level without relying on old and outdated data sources that we did in the past. So my research lab looks at the use of wearables and IoT devices for filling in that gap. We're in the business of connecting data sources that are available in the community that are already collected and properly curated by companies, by larger organizations, but are not readily available for public health researchers. And we create that intermediary, like we create the ecosystem in between that allows public health officials to make good use of that data. So a few examples of projects that we have been working with in the past few years. One of them includes, for example, the use of social media as a public health surveillance tool. We use Twitter data for understanding misinformation in social media around fluoride content in dentistry. We have other applications of the same ecosystem on the use of Russian propaganda and also on the misinformation around vaccine hesitancy. Also important to explore beyond just the actual research question that we're exploring is the ethical application of this data. Should we actually be using these novel data sources, and should we actually be implementing the systems because a lot of these data systems include data that is publicly available. We're talking about data that's readily available on Twitter, or that it's often scraped directly from open data sources in the web. So we recently published this paper where we're looking at the ethical principles of infodemiology. Another example is our study on the use of smart thermostat data for sleep monitoring, where in partnership with Ecobee, if you have a smart thermostat in Canada, it's very likely that you have an Ecobee thermostat. We work with them and have access to an open data set of over 200,000 smart thermostats in Canada, where we're able to understand at the population level. We're not looking at individual households, but we're interested in the global impact of events like climate change caused by climate change, for example, heat waves, as well as the pandemic and policies associated with the pandemic. And lastly, we're now trying to, as I mentioned, get this data and connect that with public health officials in Health Canada and other agencies around Canada. There's a lot of interest from not only from public health offices, but also from community housing managers around Canada to understand what are the impacts at the household level and how can they provide services to the community that can address the extreme events that these communities are facing in this current climate crisis that we're facing. I'm going to stop here. Thank you very much. I'm on my 5 minutes. I'll be open for questions at the end of this session. Thank you very much.
And thank you. That was very well done, and I really appreciate those incredible visuals. It's now my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Kiemute Oyibo, an assistant professor of computer science at York University, whose research focuses on utilizing persuasive technology in driving behavior and social change with a focus on digital health. Good day.
Thank you for the introduction. Let me share my screen. All right, I'm good to go. Thank you for having me. I would like to begin with a personal story on how I came to do research in the field of persuasive technology. Persuasive technology is an application intentionally designed to change attitudes and behavior without deception or manipulation. I had wanted to be a poet after reading poems like Ozymandias by Percy Shelley and Wole Soyinka's Telephone Conversation in my teenage years. But my father wanted me to become a telecoms engineer so that I could work in Shell, make so much money to support the family. Eventually, I ended up becoming a computer scientist. At first, I thought I was on the wrong path. Down the road, I came to realize there wasn't really much difference between what my father and I wanted and where I found myself eventually. For example, not only do poetry and persuasive technology share the letters PTY in common, there is poetry in persuasive technology. Eventually, I realized all three domains interact to foster beneficial behaviors in society. In other words, poetry, my first love, telecoms, my father's wish, and persuasive technology, my current craft, and are one and the same for me. They are potent catalytic agents for social change. So today, similar to writing stanzas of poems, I write blocks of codes, research, and design persuasive systems such as fitness applications to promote behavior change in different domains. My research focuses on personalizing persuasive applications to address social problems that put a lot of stress on the healthcare system and cost Canadians so much of their tax money. Such applications include fitness apps and medication incident reporting systems. For example, in my doctoral work, I found that personal strategies such as goal setting and self-monitoring are more likely to be effective in promoting physical activity among people in individualist cultures such as Canada, while social strategies such as group-based monitoring and social comparison are more likely to be effective among people in collectivist cultures such as Nigeria. During the pandemic, most of the contact tracing apps worldwide suffered from low adoption, partly due to privacy, lack of trust, and poor design. As such, I incorporated persuasive principles into the Canadian COVID Alert app. On the left is a is the no exposure interface, into which contact self-monitoring is incorporated. On the right is a diagnosis report interface, into which a social proof message is incorporated to increase diagnosis reporting. My research found that the persuasive version was more persuasive and likely to be adopted by Canadians. More recently, I began working in the pharmacy domain, where medication incidents are the third leading cause of death in Canada after cancer and heart disease. Research shows that there's a relationship between medication incidents and patient harm. However, current medication incident reporting systems are not used regularly to report medication incidents, partly due to design limitations. As a result, I'm currently working with professors at Dalhousie University and industry partners at Think Research to make these systems more persuasive to increase reporting, shared learning, and promote patient safety. In conclusion, my research in the last decade has shown persuasive technology can be used to encourage healthy behaviors. My findings highlight the need to personalize persuasive applications to the target users to make them more effective. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I'm going to go now to Dr. Tamara Vanderwal, who is a clinician scientist at the BC Children's Hospital Research Institute, also a psychiatrist at the BC Children's Hospital, and an assistant professor at the Department of Psychiatry at UBC, University of British Columbia. Dr. Vanderwal?
Thank you, Alison. And thank you, everybody. I've really enjoyed hearing all of these talks, and I'm very excited to be able to talk about our work using movie fMRI to study child psychiatric disorders. So our machine of interest is one you're probably familiar with. So this is the MRI machine. It can be used to come up with beautiful images from inside of things. So for example, inside the knee, a pomegranate. We can look at, getting closer to home for me, the structure of the human brain. This is the same machine also looking at the structure of the human brain, but from a different perspective. And what our work is interested in is more about brain function as opposed to brain structure. The approach in my lab is a little bit different. An analogy I like to use is thinking about a cardiac stress test. So if you go for a cardiac stress test, first, what you're going to do is lay down, and the doctor is going to look at the signal from your heart when you're just at rest. Then we're going to make you work. You're going to get on a treadmill. You're going to start running. We're going to make the heart work. And then we're going to look at the signal from the heart. The important thing there is that you need to be able to compare the signal differences from rest to at work in order to see a clinical difference that is important, that tells you something is wrong with the heart. So we like to try to do that in the MRI when we're studying the brain. So how do we do that? I'm going to show you just a couple seconds from this movie that we made. And this is to be the resting state for the brain inside the magnet. And we made this back in 2015, and it's now actually being used around the world for different studies. So I'm going to give you just a few seconds so you can get the feel for this movie called Inscapes. So you get the feel. This is a very calming way to be inside the MRI. We're not driving the brain. We're not driving the social processing, etc. So that's our rest measure. Then you can imagine that we could use movies to evoke all sorts of activity and to drive the brain. For example, if I were interested in social processing in complex situations, movies let me do that. I'm interested in depression in youth. We can use movies very poignantly to engage emotional circuitry in the brain. For example, in this clip with sadness. This is a movie that we've made in the lab that we're just starting to test right now. This is to look at individuals who have obsessive compulsive disorder and try to understand their brain function better. Once we have all of this very rich movie watching data, we can do all sorts of different things with it. And this is one of the approaches that we think is promising, which is this gradient approach, where we look at how connections in the brain are organized. And here we're starting to understand the organizational differences between rest and movie. We can also start to understand the differences between being a kid and how your brain is organized differently when you're an older adolescent. And of course, as a practicing child psychiatrist, the ultimate goal is to use this kind of approach to understand fundamental information about the brain that we don't know yet about these child psychiatric disorders. The hope is that once we know what is actually different in the brain, this will open up ideas about how to treat these things differently, can change how we diagnose and how we treat. And so for me, that's a big deal and has an amazing potential to be able to help us deal better with this youth mental health crisis that we're in the middle of. So with that, I will say thank you very much to my lab and to collaborators and of course to funding. This MRI work is very, very expensive. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I have the great pleasure to say, last but not least, Dr. Alain Moreau, who is the head of the Molecular Genetics Laboratory of Musculoskeletal Diseases at the University of Montreal. Over to you, Dr. Moreau.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Alison. So I'm start to share my screen. So here we go. So today I will talk to you about myalgic encephalomyelitis, also known as chronic fatigue syndrome. So this is a very debilitating disease that affect up to 600,000 Canadians right now. So it's 11.1 in every 500 Canadians having ME, but a large percentage of those patients are undiagnosed for different reasons, because there is no lab tests, and most of the way that clinicians are diagnosing ME is by exclusions to eliminate all possible diseases that can explain the symptoms, which may take up to 8 years to end up with this type of exclusion diagnosis. This rate is much higher than any other known disease. So if you compare with well-known neurodegenerative diseases, you can see that ME is not a rare disease. It affects a way too much individual. And the need to study, understand, and treat ME is even more urgent now, given that at least half of the people with long COVID meet the criteria for a ME diagnosis. So that number will increase. And also chronic Lyme disease can lead to ME as long-term sequelae. So in the number of cases, as you may know, of Lyme disease is increasing. Which is also very intriguing, is up to 25% of patients with ME, unfortunately, are housebound with severe symptoms, and that prevent them to participate in clinical studies or clinical trials. So, and this is what we need, digital technologies to try to understand and to learn from them what is going wrong, as opposed to wait for another day. So, there are several challenges to recognize all the facets of ME, and we need to think outside the box to better understand ME and its consequence. So often I'm presenting the disease to clinicians and the public at large. I'm saying that it's like to resolve a Rubik cube with changing colors. So not only a Rubik cube is maybe difficult, but if the color are changing, it's almost impossible. And depending if you present yourself when you're suffering of ME to a good day versus a bad day, or you are being a bad day at the clinic with your attending physician, but 2 weeks later, you go for the blood testing, and of course, the blood testing won't reveal anything because your symptoms are changing depending on your level of activities. So it's very complex. So that's why we develop different technology and digital health innovations that can assist us on the research side, but keep in mind that those research tools can be immediately implemented at home to assess the patients. And one of the key here is that we apply a standardized provocation maneuver using, in that case, an inflatable cuff that allow to create a kind of passive exercise to each participant that are just lying in their bed. And doing that, it's like for them to run a marathon. And I will show you some example here. So at the same time that we are applying this cuff, we are doing a lot of baseline measurement before the stress test to see the cognitive function using the brain check test, as you can see here, as well as to record in a real time the oxygen level in the brain using a technology called near-infrared spectroscopy that we apply electrodes on the foreheads of the participants. And you can see here, there's a big difference between the left and the right. So the right is indicated in brownish colors and the left side is in blue. And also the cerebral blood flow can be registered by this apparatus. And we see here a gain of about 8% during the passive exercise that affect this individual. At the same time, we are collecting different biological fluid, saliva, morning urine, blood before and after. And we are using the Exoskin Smart Connected Vest to register different physiological changes like heart rate, breathing rate, and also to measure the sleep disturbances associated with ME. In that case, we capture in a patient what we call a chronotropic insufficiency, which allowed us to see that the heart rate was very high at 80 beats per minute. And suddenly when we turn on the machine, you see that the drastic reduction by 30 beats per minute that we call bradycardia. And this is sufficient to refer these patients in cardiology to further investigation. At the same time, a lot of people are challenging my team, saying that is it enough to create some kind of exercise? Yes, you can see here in red that we saw an accumulation of lactic acid in a majority of patients. All the patients are dark, each dots are represent a patient. And you see the after in red and before in green. So really these individuals is like they are running a marathon during 90 minutes and they are very, very tired and they are developing a brain fog at the end of the exercise or in the subsequent hours. This is what we call post-exertional malaise. So by combining this digital technology with omic approaches, we are able for the very first time to understand the diseases. In fact, that led us to develop the very first test to objectively perform a diagnosis of ME/CFS, and we can also split with other conditions that having similar symptoms like fibromyalgia. So if you want to learn more, yes, I'm finishing. If you want to learn more, you can join us through our website or email, or you can email me directly. So thank you very much.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thanks to all our researchers for doing such an incredible job of showcasing your research. I know it's very hard to do it in a tiny amount of time because of how vast and important these bodies of work are. But it is so great when you do such a great job of making it accessible to us and giving us an entry point into your work. I can see that it's generated so many ideas, people who want to connect with each other. We couldn't ask for more, quite frankly. And so with the bit of time that remains, I really want to make sure that anyone in the audience who would like to ask questions of our second group can go ahead, and I see Ivan right away as Christy's pulling up our researchers into our screen here. Ivan, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ivan. I'm the Director of Research Informatics and Technology at the CHIO Research Institute in Ottawa. Thank you to all the presenters. It's really amazing to see a lot of this work that everyone's working very hard on. I think my question is more of a general one. So, you know, the work that we undergo in research that drives a lot of the innovation is grant funded, and there are projects that sometimes result in tools and like infrastructure that needs to be maintained and sustainably funded, but unfortunately not everything is or can be, or it can be easily commercialized. So just thinking about how can we ensure the sustainability of the funding for these projects without the perpetual fear of running out of money or the overhead of applying to multiple funding sources and, constantly trying to, build the plane as we're flying it.
Excellent and great points. And if anyone wants to respond, I think we share your commitment and your perspectives, Ivan. And as I mentioned, I think there's a lot of us who try to keep this on the front burner with the federal government. Sorry, Alain, were you motioning to say something?
Yes, I fully agree with your comment. And one of the way to help, at least, is having national research network. So CHR, we support the development of ICANN-CME, which is a national research network dedicated to MSFS. And that allowed us to support newcomers in the field to have some small grant to develop pilot data or pilot studies demonstrating feasibility, and that allowed researcher and small research team to be more competitive. And many other Canadian research networks are doing the same process. This is the way that you can start. But again, sustainability is always a challenge. This year, we developed a new approach to bring industry with us. At least we try to have, we have what we call Canadian Readiness Program to de-risk clinical trial for complex diseases. And we were fortunate to attract a lot of new players around the table just to listen, to learn from us, and eventually having a better knowledge of these complex diseases that may allow to develop one-to-one new project that can be funded by the industry.
Thank you. And Liam is going to respond. And then to the gentleman with his hand up, blue shirt, glasses. Sorry, I can't tell from your handle what your name is, but Liam, and then the gentleman with his hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Alison. Yeah, great question, Ivan. I think one of the opportunities here is to invest in the partnerships within the hospital system and to be able to create capability to test these types of innovations and do the research within hospital systems. And then also to provide opportunities to industry to be able to apply for those types of funding and have access to funding as well. So if it's a startup company that has a minimum viable product looking to get access to the healthcare system, having access to funding to be able to work with a university, hospital or hospital to be able to test out that product. But then there's an investment that's going to need to be made in the hospital system as well to be able to support some of those researchers.
Thanks, Liam. And to the gentleman with his hand, please go ahead.
Great, thanks. It's Dougal Seeley from the Center for Health Innovation in Ottawa. Actually, just a specific question, I guess, for Dr. Vanderwal, really interested in the functional MRI and its application around mental health disorders. Just wondering, is there any application for this kind of a testing in situations where you've got kids or adults that are so anxious that they can't actually get in an MRI without being totally dysfunctional? I know there's a consciousness requirement for that testing, but is there any way of, I don't know, accessing either some of the processes when someone's unconscious and sedated, or does that totally distort the data?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things we like about movies is that for the kids or patients who are maybe a little bit less severe than what you're talking about, the movies do help some kids be able to be in the scanner who otherwise wouldn't be able to be. But there's definitely specific populations where an awake scan, it takes at least half an hour to get a full data set. You know, kids just aren't going to be able to do that. So there are ways you can do sleep studies but then you're specifically studying the functional organization in the brain during sleep, which is different than awake. And so that's its whole own sort of situation and its whole own world. It's not, I think, as instructive for things like symptoms that we're interested in. And so, yeah, it's still definitely a barrier.
Thanks, great.
Sure.
Anyone else within our participants who would like to ask a question? And while I wait for that, are there any of our second group or the first group who want to address anything they've seen in the chat or things they've heard from each other? Oh, sorry, I've got Kim who'd like to ask a question.
Yeah, I want to ask a question to Liam. In your picture of like your pathway, what did you mean by technology briefing and human factors? How's that build into the pathway of your innovation?
Okay, no, thanks, Kim, for the question. So the way that we've built out the pipeline, so the technology briefing is basically a research service that we provide to the startup community or an innovator or a new technology coming into Canada, where the technology, the idea is pitched in front of subject matter experts within our healthcare system. What we're trying to understand is if this technology, this solution is solving a problem that we have specifically within our healthcare system. And it goes to measure kind of what do we call the validity or the face validity of the solution to be able to solve that problem. And then what we would do is take any pre-existing data that company may have on the solution. And then we engage in a stakeholder engagement session. We have an evaluation around it. And the output of that is a report that we give back to the company, generally speaking, talking about that face validity. The human factors testing is specific to looking at the interaction between the device, if this is a medical device, and the human participant to understand its usability, how easy it's to use, and outcomes to that extent. We use the human factors testing to help companies work towards Health Canada approval or to get that limited approval to be able to move into clinical trial setting. Does that answer your question, Kim?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Liam. And I know we're at time, and I know we've occupied a decent chunk. So I am really wanting to thank this incredible group of researchers, innovators, experts, who by coming together, by being willing to communicate, have created this incredible forum. I think your work has inspired us. It's certainly inspired those of us who do spend their time advocating for more support for the research environment, but also the innovation entire pipeline. And today is a great reminder of why that is so essential, particularly in Canada. Thanks to everyone, and thanks to our incredible supporters. I've restated them in the chat. Our lead sponsor, Innovative Medicines, our prime sponsors, Kids Brain Health Network and the ILC Foundation, as well as BD Canada, Lakehead University, the McGill University Health Center Research Institute, the Provincial Health Services Authority, and the Thunder Bay Regional Health Research Institute. And to all of you who chose to spend time with us, and again, to all our researchers, I wish we had the sound of a round of applause. That's one of the sad things being on Zoom, but I really can't thank you all enough, and hope the connections made today and the opportunity to be with each other has proved very valuable. And we are always happy to do this to respond to interest in the community. So stay in touch with Research Canada. You'll be hearing lots more from us. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.